come along with me. We're going to interview some pioneers of the Apollo space program. Check this out.
I had lunar dust. I mean, it just infiltrates everything.
Hey YouTubers, it's Back Focus 11. A special treat for you in this video. This video is different than the other ones I've done. I'm taking you along to work with me. We're currently right now here at the San Diego Air and Space Museum, kind of parked underneath a SR-71 in front of the museum. And premiering here today at a benefit event is going to be the remaining 2 astronauts left still alive from the Apollo 13 flight. That's right, the one the movie was made after. And these aren't the actors, these are the real guys that were sweating bullets, hoping they could survive that flight back to Earth with their air and their oxygen running out. Anyway, let's go inside and check these guys out. Lots of American space history right behind me, all together in this room. It's amazing. So we're speaking with James Lovell, who was on Apollo 13. Let's just go back right now, back in time. If you could just give us a snapshot of what was going through your mind when you found out that you guys were running out of oxygen in that space capsule.
Well, I think it was one of, suddenly there was a crisis. It took a little time to understand just what was going on. But after that, when we saw the oxygen escaping, we knew that we had limited time in the command module, and we had to move over to our lunar module to see if we could use it as a lifeboat somehow or some way to get home.
At that point, I mean, before you discovered how to makeshift that device you use with the tubes and everything, I don't know what you guys called it, but did you think that there was any hope? I mean, or did you realize there was like a moment of mortality when this was going on?
Well, we didn't think our chances were too great at that time, but as we started working closely with Mission Control, that we found out more and more and got over one crisis after another, that our odds started to increase greatly until we finally landed back in the ocean.
Now, at one point when this was occurring, did you or any other of your brother astronauts feel any of the effects of hypoxia?
No, we did not. We had sufficient oxygen. We didn't have it in the command module, but we had enough oxygen in the lunar module and used that because we also had oxygen in our backpacks, which we were going to use on the lunar surface. And since we weren't on the lunar surface, we could have tapped into that.
And once you guys splashed down here on planet Earth, what was the feeling going through your mind?
Well, it was a great sigh of relief to see the water splash over the window, and that we had cheated death again.
Let's talk a little bit about the current space program. We're going back to a similar type rocketry system with a capsule. How do you feel about us going back to this, I guess, based on an earlier system like you flew me?
Well, you have to remember that we had back in 2005, when the shuttle program was slowing down, we had a program called Constellation, which was similar in concept of using spacecraft like Apollo, although bigger. It was a great program to go then to the International Space Station, then go back to the moon, and finally, over a series of years and improvement of the infrastructure, to maybe eventually go into Mars. That program was canceled in 2010. And now you see some of the segments of that program being resurrected. The Orion spacecraft, which was flown for the first time in December, is just like the spacecraft that was on Constellation. The Congress has ordered a big booster, but the program, in my estimation, is still disjointed. There is no senior congressional leader that wants to take charge or have some leader in aerospace industry assigned by Congress to really push the program through. And I think it's well worthwhile to keep a space program within the United States. I think it lends prestige to this country, It gives us a period of position of first in technology, and so to see its demise is sort of disappointing to me.
A lot of people that are into drones, UAV, aircraft, what's your feelings about that? Do you think this is a great technology that's up and coming?
Well, it's obviously a great technology. The military have had it now for several years, and now the civilian population is getting into it for things just like the media. I mean, the media can use it. Real estate people have fun with it. All sorts of things. Architects. No, it's here to stay. It has its downsides. It takes away a lot of privacy, perhaps, if people use it the wrong way. And I can see there's got to be rules and regulations on its use. But it's here. It's not going to go away.
My name is Fred Hayes. That's spelled F-R-E-D.
The life of a TV reporter. Microphone battery died in the middle of the interview with Mr. Hayes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So now we're heading back up, and hopefully we can catch him again and continue where we left off. This is the stuff you don't see on television. Let's go back in time to when you were aboard Apollo 13. When you first found out you guys were losing the oxygen saturation level in that capsule, what was going through your mind?
When we hit the what, I'm sorry?
When you found out you were losing the oxygen content in the capsule, what was going through your mind?
Well, we had 2 oxygen tanks, and initially it looked like we had lost one of the 2 tanks. So it was really not life-threatening in my mind at the time. Mostly I had just a sick feeling in the pit of my stomach of disappointment because I knew we had lost the landing mission, even if the second oxygen tank was intact, and we'd just do a normal abort, fully powered up, and come home ASAP.
Explain to us, when you guys engineered that device that you made in flight there, were you optimistic it was going to work?
I was not involved, frankly, in the manufacture of that. People on the ground developed it, and they built it, and they tested it with a human subject in the chamber before the procedure was passed up for Jim and Jack Schweigert to actually build the thing in our spacecraft. I was off duty at the time. So I know there was most of the things we did, new procedures. They were always tested on the ground with other astronauts in various simulators. So it's pretty much proven on the ground before it ever got passed up to us.
Once you were out in space and you found out this was happening, did you guys think you were going to make it back?
I'm sorry?
Did you guys ever think you weren't going to make it back?
At one point, when we got the LEM powered up, Jim asked me to calculate consumables, and I assumed the power down that we actually ended up going lower than that in the lunar module. I figured we'd get back to the entry point. The remaining question was, how would the command module, the mothership, which was never planned to be powered down in flight, never tested to be powered down, how it would operate when we tried to turn it back on. So that was to me, the remaining question mark.
When we stopped going to the moon, what was your reaction?
Well, there was always a limited program. Even in the start, the planned missions were 20. There were 20 missions planned, followed by what was called Apollo Applications, which ended up being the Skylab mission. So, like most programs NASA had, Mercury, Gemini, they were limited programs. So even from the start, they were only going to manufacture the hardware to fly 20 missions.
All right, I'm almost done. Our current space program that we're developing now, we're kind of going back to the old form of rocketry with a capsule and sections and stages and things. What's your feelings of that? Do you think that's a good move?
Well, the capsule is a much more forgiving type of vehicle than the shuttle, which had a tile system. So the capsule control system is simpler. Heat shield is a lot safer to do aborts right off the launch pad if you needed to. So it's, for the missions planned, it's adequate.
All right, and what do you think we should be doing with our space program now going into the future?
What should we be doing? We should have never stopped. It should have been moving, continuing to work and move outward. But you're asking the wrong person. You got to ask Congress and administration about that.
And Gene, obviously your voice, we remember hearing you so much on the radio talking to the capsule during this catastrophe, if you want to call it, or calamity. Tell us what was going through your mind at Mission Control when they radioed in saying their oxygen levels were going down.
Actually, it was, there were three separate phases I went through. The first time, we had a couple electrical problems earlier in the shift. And I thought, gee, we're going to solve these problems quickly. The second phase I went through, as one of my controllers said, we had a big bang associated with it. And I thought, gee, tread carefully. And when Jim Lovell said he's seeing the gas escaping outside the spacecraft, I got into survival mode. So it was basically the kind of downmoding. I was an aviator, and I got used to working the problems in that fashion.
So whereas everybody kind of working overtime inside, Mission Control at that time, no one was allowed to leave?
No, the teams, almost in a miraculous fashion, we generally switched over every 8 to 10 hours. I took my team offline. We were what was called a lead team, so basically we had the responsibility for the crisis management. So we had to come up with a solution and return to the consoles only for two events: the get home fast maneuver as the spacecraft passed behind the moon, and then actually the final 8 hours prior to landing.
Was there ever a time amongst the consensus of the people in the room that during that day that they weren't going to make it back?
No, actually the mission control team is absolutely positive. We got a job. We're going to get it accomplished. When I gave this speech in the data room, I said, this crew is coming home. You got to believe it. Your team must believe it, and we will make it happen.
What's your feelings about today's NASA? Are we slipping behind in the space program?
I think they need a sense of direction. In fact, we need some kind of a spiritual leader, some person who can articulate the need for our work in space. I believe we're surrendering the high ground to other nations around the world, and this gives me a lot of concern because once you surrender the high ground, it's awful tough to regain it.
All right, and Gene, this is a question I'm going to put on YouTube for my friends. I have a YouTube channel all about drones and UAV aircraft. What's your feelings about UAVs and drones and upcoming technology?
I think this question about UAV and drones, I think, is almost a next generation of space systems that are going to fly. I get concerned about them flying at low levels around here, principally because there's aircraft flying at low levels. And we had one aircraft we lost out at the museum that picked up a bird down there. We lost both crewmen on board the aircraft. So I think there's got to be some air traffic control. And I don't see it's possible in that kind of an environment.
So do you have a message for people flying these objects? And these
I think the bottom line is you got to be aware of the risks, not only to yourself, but to the people who are also up in airspace. And you have to assure that you take whatever actions are necessary to control that risk.
All right, so Gene, tell us, you were the last man to put your foot on the moon.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel that we're not doing missions like that anymore?
Boy, you're hitting a very sensitive point and spot. It's incredible. 42 years ago, I spent over 3 days on the moon. And today we can't get an American in space on American hardware. That's totally unacceptable and should not have gone that way. It's all happened in the last 6 years. We had a program called Constellation that was viable, that was doable, and I believe was very affordable, that could have taken us back to the moon probably in the early 20s, and probably on the Mars by 2030. Now we're a generation or two behind that. It will happen, because what goes around comes around. It will happen, but it's inexcusable, it's unwarranted. I think Apollo, looking back at Apollo, is something that happened in modern times, may be the greatest example of American exceptionalism, at least it comes to my mind. And look where we are today in space. Disappointing, to say the least.
Now, looking at our current space program that we're starting to develop now, it looks like we're going back to basically the Apollo's legacy, building on rockets and stages and capsules. Do you think that was a good move that we're about to embark on?
Well, but we're not embarking on anything. We have no mission. We have no goal. We have no timetable. We're building a spacecraft to do what? I guess the first thing it's going to try and do, and put it on top of a rocket, is get us back to the space station, which is very important because I'm tired of having the handout to the Russians to get us back there. Number one, it puts us in a very tenable position right now, and we're building a rocket, a gigantic rocket, I guess bigger than the old Saturn V, to take us where? Where's it going to take us? We talk about, well, maybe we can land on on a meteor someday or something like, you know, a questionable goal anyway. Going to the moon, going back to the moon and onto Mars is with the real path we ought to be taking. But this big rocket is being built, may never be finished because of its cost along the way. You know how those things work. Without a goal, without a mission. It's the same thing as space program. We're wandering in space. Neil Armstrong said several years ago when we testified in front of Congress, I'll never forget it, he said, if we stay on the path we are on, this was a few years ago, we will become a third world nation in space. He was predictably correct because we are now a third world nation in space, and we can't afford that.
Well, we'll be going into a presidential election next year. What kind of things do you think we should be asking of our future leaders?
Well, unfortunately, because everything else that's going on in the world today, space is not on the tip of everybody's tongue. It really hasn't been an issue in the last 2 or 3 elections. Having testified in front of Congress and know a lot of senators and congressmen, space has been, since Kennedy challenged us to go to the moon, a bipartisan issue, and it is today. We get all kinds of attaboys and all kinds of support from both sides of the aisle. But by the time the Congress gets together and tries to rebuke what the administration has done and is doing, it's already done. It's too late. So there's a lot of talk and a lot of good ideas and a lot of people who really believe in what we ought to be doing, but it never seems to happen. And, you know, people say, well, the budget's too low. It's not how much money you've got. It's how you spend it that counts. And I went to the launch site for all of our Apollo missions. They've done a movie on me, on my life recently, which I resisted doing, but until someone said, Gene, it's not about you, it's about the story of a kid who grew up in Chicago with a dream about flying airplanes off aircraft carriers, and that dream led him to be able to call remote his home. And part of that movie, it's called Last Man on the Moon, follows the title of my book. I went back to the pad. It's disintegrated. One is just nothing but gravel. There's 2 pads there, one is gravel. And the other one has still got a few structures. And they've got a crew of people there to keep it from rusting to death so someone doesn't get hurt. I said in the movie publicly that I'm sorry I came. I don't want to see it this way. That was the only place in the entire world, in the history of mankind thus far, that human beings have left this planet to go someplace else. It's got to be more meaningful than it's being treated today.
Let's go back to when you actually put your foot on the moon. What does it feel like to walk up there? Just describe it to us. For us Earthlings that never left this planet, what does it feel like?
Well, you know, the first steps on the moon had been made long before I got there. But my first steps were my first steps. And zero gravity, you know, human beings are very adaptable to zero gravity, but when you step on the moon and you're in 1/6 gravity, it's even better. It's wonderful. It takes you 5-10 minutes to realize that, you know, if you're going to start moving pretty fast, you don't walk from place to place. You hop and jump. You don't need to. You just take advantage of the advantage that 1/6 gravity gives you, and it's wonderful. But the most important thing about my first steps is I sort of always felt like an underdog, and there's a long history to that. And fate played so big a part in my life from beginning to end to get me where I got, that I had to prove to myself as commander of Apollo 17 that I was good enough, that I could do it. And when I stepped on the moon, what was going to come the next 3 days and getting back home were certainly significant and important. But I did what I needed to do. Now let's get on with the rest of it. That was important to me.
What do you have to say about, as far as life out there beyond other worlds? Are we able
Well, yeah, I have never seen any, no matter what you hear, and there's a lot of stories out there. I don't think any of my colleagues have ever seen anything they could call life or aliens out there. And certainly I'm flying 3 times and twice to the moon. I've had a lot of chances. But you know, if you look for 2 reasons, if you look at it statistically, mathematically, with the jillions and jillions of stars and planets and sun, there's got to be other planets which support life. So why isn't it out there? If you look at it sort of spiritually, the way I looked at it when I looked back at the Earth, at the small part, I sat on God's front porch for 3 days of my life. It's the only way I can explain it. Looking at the small part of the universe that our Creator, however you want, whatever name you want to call him, that our Creator, you know, put together. And I came to the conclusion that the Earth is just too beautiful to have happened by accident. And if you believe that there is a Creator who created this universe, how can you and I be so arrogant to believe He didn't create life somewhere else? So I do believe there's life. When and if and how we ever come in contact with it, I don't know. Time, you know, time is that 4th dimension which controls so much of our life and becomes so different when you go out into space. You know, if you believe Einstein, you travel at the speed of light or faster, you don't age or you become younger. And yet we look through Hubble and we're seeing magnificent stars on galaxies out there that are probably blowing up jillions of years ago, but we're seeing them now because it takes that long for the light to travel to us. How long will it take to find that life out there? I don't know, but sometime, I think, somewhere, sometime in the future, however long the future is, we will.
All right, last question. I'm going to cut you loose. What do you have to say to the people out there that are conspiracy theory buffs that think men like you and your Apollo colleagues never went there?
Yeah, we got one outside, not one here.
I don't really say much to them. All I can say is they missed one of the most exciting periods in the history of modern mankind by not being part of those voyages, because the rest of the world was on board with us on every flight we took. We packed a lot of rocks.
The question was,
in a vacuum, like, right? And well, you know, we packed a lot of rocks in the box so they'd be untouched with bare hands, human hands, and they'd be packed in a vacuum, not exposed to oxygen.
Right.
But we took some inside with us and packed in a loose bag, and we got out of our suits and with our bare hands. I had lunar dust. I mean, it just infiltrates everything. But the first thing that came to me when we got inside and could touch and see and feel the real rock, it smelled to me like spent gunpowder. Spent gunpowder. Now, if you can associate that with something, be my guest.
Well, I think it was Harrison Smith that said he thought it was because it was the first time oxygen had ever hit into that.
It may be. That's right. It is the first time oxygen ever hit that rock or that powder we're holding in our hands, and maybe that certainly had something to do with it. I'm not smart enough to know. I'm a naval aviator. I'm not a scientist, although I had to pretend I was when I was on the move.
So now we're back outside with all the live trucks and media. It's time to head back to the station, edit this piece, and air it on TV tonight. So here it is.
You're watching San Diego 6 News at 10.
Well, one of the largest gatherings of the early astronauts that pioneered space and walked the moon took place at the Air and Space Museum in Balboa Park today.
The highlight of the event was honoring the crew of the doomed Apollo 13 mission, which made it back to Earth with barely enough oxygen on board. San Diego 6's Gary Buzel is live at the newsroom with the story. Gary.
Derek and Brooke, you may have seen the movie, but to hear the story firsthand, what these men went through thousands of miles from Earth facing death, it's simply breathtaking.
Houston, we've had a problem.
April 1970, the sounds of trouble echo across a NASA radio. Apollo 13, en route to the moon with astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes, are in trouble.
So we are venting something.
What they were venting was the very thing keeping them alive in the vacuum of space, oxygen.
Jim Lovell said he's seen the gas escaping outside the spacecraft. I got into survival mode.
Gene Kranz was the flight director, the radio lifeline between Apollo 13 and Earth.
How about you, Ecom? You see anything that, with the instrumentation you got, that could be venting?
The carbon dioxide levels began to rise, and the oxygen levels began to lower, leaving a crew of astronauts beginning to worry.
We didn't think our chances were too great at that time, but as we started working closely with Mission Control.
Sick feeling in the pit of my stomach of disappointment because I knew we had lost the landing mission, even if the second oxygen tank was intact.
Hang in there, it won't be long.
The crew was able to create enough breathable air to make it home, thanks to a makeshift air filtration system they built with some onboard supplies.
It was a great sigh of relief to see the water splash over the window. We had cheated death again.
Epitomize the character that accepts danger and surmounts it.
Fast forward nearly 45 years to here at the San Diego Air and Space Museum, where the crew of Apollo 13 and all of the early space missions were honored at a speaking event Saturday.
My camera, big smile.
A time to reflect and a time to question our future in space.
We're not embarking on anything. We have no mission. We have no goal. We have no timetable.
Apollo 17 astronaut Gene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon, feels we need to do more on future space exploration beyond the Orion program that is currently under testing.
We're building a spacecraft to do what? I guess the first thing it's going to try and do and put it on top of a rocket is get us back to the space station, which is very important because I'm tired of having the handout to the Russians.
We're not the lead dog, and I don't know whether we will in the future.
We should have never stopped. It should have been moving, continuing to work and move outward.
For these men of aerospace history, today is a day to reflect, but also a time to press forward.
Part of a historic moment in time when humanity is first stepping off the planet. We haven't gotten all that much further.
Now, the Air and Space Museum at Balboa Park has on display the Apollo 9 space capsule, and they currently are looking for volunteers to help maintain it, along with many of the other exhibits on display. For more information on that, go to our website at sandiego6.com. There you'll find a link. Reporting live in the newsroom, I'm Gary Buzel, San Diego 6 News. All right, folks, I think that'll do it for this video. What an amazing day that was to go and see all those astronauts in one place and to hear the talking history of these Apollo crew members. I mean, being a child of the 80s like myself, got to see the Columbia liftoff in the early 80s and the Challenger disaster and the whole space shuttle and the International Space Station and all that cool stuff. But for you folks that were alive in the time when Kennedy made that announcement and you guys saw the moon landing in the late 60s and then into the early 70s, and that was just an amazing time for space and for America. And fortunately, I wasn't there to see it, but got to hear a lot about it from these people. Anyway, that'll do it for this video. Before we go, I just want to remind you, make sure you subscribe to my channel here, Backfocus 11, and my friend Jim Bowers, Demon Seed. On tax day, April 15th, we'll be giving away a $500 shopping spree at acesdeals.biz. Tons of drone stuff, batteries, anything you can think of for your UAV flying stuff, you can get it at Aces Deals. So check that out, make sure you subscribe. There's not a lot of subscribers here on Backfocus 11. We're under 1,000 still, so your chances of winning something are pretty high compared to other people that give away stuff. So definitely click on that subscribe button. Anyway, I'm out here on a hiking trail. Before I leave, I just want to show you something that I saw on this bench that I'm sitting on. These cool little words here. Cherish and hold sacred these open spaces and wilderness. Kelly and Dan Cadenhead. Very interesting words for such a serene place that I'm at right now. This is a nature preserve in eastern San Diego County, California. And you can just see all around me here. You can just see this flat plain and barely see anything of civilization. You see a little bit of houses and a school way down there. But this is a place I like to come to just kind of get away and refresh my mind. And I think we all need to do that. Get out there and enjoy nature. Get out there and enjoy wildlife. And take your drone with you. Capture some great video. Anyway, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next video on Backfocus 11. We'll see ya.